Hi, my name is Morgan May. I am working to get my license in secondary education broadfield social studies, with psychology being the second major added on there. Before I get into it, I like to first say that when I went to college at first, I did not think I was going to be a teacher. I went in to be a nurse. But I found out that that was definitely not my true calling. And after a couple classes with Professor Donovan, I definitely changed my mind very quick and realized that this is what I needed to be doing. Besides my 150 hours, I also had a lot of experience working with kids, especially at the high school level with my cousins. Um, Mental illness runs in my family, and I was, of course, the first one to go through middle school and high school with it, and I had a big train of kids following me, and I have kind of been the one-on-one person that's been helping them their whole lives with dealing with strategies and ways to keep going forward, and that was definitely something that told me, like, this is what I need to do. This is the age group I need to be working with, and it really lit a fire in my belly. Along with that, though, my experience working in Butler Middle School for my EDU 210 was also really important for me to make that decision. It also really validated that I wanted to be working with middle school, high school kids, especially high school, because they're going through a lot and they need someone who is going to be a good base for them, someone they know they're safe with. And I want to be that person. So getting started with in task 1, which is describing how learners grow and develop. The first thing I have to get out there is that learners learn and develop differently. They vary as individuals. The way they speak, they think, they interact, they feel, it's all going to be different. So it's unfair for me to assume that they're going to grow and develop the same. So it's up to me to provide and create lessons and activities that promote their individual learning through their own interests and strengths. I have to also take into account things like culture, language, comprehension, relevancy, and just interest of the student overall, and use it to my advantage. My goal is to do all of this while still providing an obtainable challenge for them in their work. I first kind of had my first experience with this type of teaching when I was a high schooler taking an AP literature class. My professor would always give us a list of multiple books to choose from instead of one book that we all had to read. And what that did was it gave us kind of made us in charge of our own learning. And when we were able to kind of choose what we wanted to do, it really helped, and it helped us to kind of be our own individuals and learn in our own way. I also had this experience when I was in Professor Stickles' class in EDU 203, and I'll explain a lot more of this later, but she had a lot to do with my knowledge of collaboration, and everyone was able to kind of cater their own strengths and interests in that class and bring it together for some big overarching ideas. For InTask Standard 2, I would like to first start out with my EDU 202 class with Professor Yuri, who taught me a lot of methods for working with students at different levels of understanding and how to kind of incorporate their diversity to my own advantage. Examples of this would be like providing time for my students to discuss their experience and past knowledge in our class. That was something that Yuri did a lot. But Dr. Amy Tosin in EDU 261 was all about strategies, and she helped me there with like providing strategies to make my learning environment a lot more inclusive. And these were things such as like providing fidget toys for my kids or writing down the expectations on a piece of paper for a kid who needs to reference it a couple more times. Anything like that, these tiny things that can just make my classroom a lot more inclusive and helpful for individual learners. I also have to say with Dr. Amy Tosin, she gave me some knowledge that I will keep my entire life because she gave us a demonstration on privilege. And that was something that I didn't realize was as important as it is. Of course, me being of the dominant culture isn't going to experience it as much, but after her class, it really showed me that I need to put as much effort as possible into creating a safe and inclusive learning environment for my students to thrive, because you don't know what they're going to be going through outside the classroom, and all my job is to prepare them the best I can, and give them a safe space to do their learning in the meantime. For in Task Standard 3, this has a lot to do with collaboration and individual learning, and I got most of my knowledge there from Professor Stickles. She taught me the importance of collaboration and how impactful it can be. This can look like just collaboration with students, with each other, or parents and teachers, teachers and teachers, anything that creates a positive learning environment full of support for your students. And a lot of it has this idea of taking individual student knowledge and turning it into this deeper knowledge through collaboration with each other. You have to encourage your students to be open with each other and respect each other's opinions and their learning. When students feel safe to share their ideas, they tend to do it more. So I want to provide that support for my learners and lead them to make these good, positive interactions with each other and other people, and to love each other for different ideas and different opinions, because it does create this engaging environment. And this can look like 100 different things. For me, I can just change the lighting and the decorations in the room, all the way to like the way I motivate my students and encourage them to challenge themselves in my classroom. So there's a lot I can do when it comes to the environment of my student is learning in. For the final thing, which is the constructivist perspective, I was asked to identify 3 constructive classroom elements that I would expect to see. There's so much more that I would expect to see than 3, but these are the 3 that I think you can expect to see in my classroom. And that is, first, experiences. Hands-on learning, engagement, experiences. This can look like field trips, experiments, demonstrations, projects, like you name it. Experiences are everything. It gave my students a reason for what they're doing. When I was a TA working in a greenhouse in high school, let me tell you, what we taught them inside the classroom, they didn't care about. But the second I took them outside to the greenhouse and showed them how impactful what they're learning was to how their plants did, then they started to care. So that really says a lot for just how important experiences are for students. They remember that more, they understand it more, they can use it later, they reference it, because it's just so much easier for them to understand something when they're actually getting their hands dirty and engaging in it. The second thing I'd like to include in my classroom would be interactions and collaboration. I've definitely talked about that a lot more than anything else in this video. Collaboration is everything to me. Discussion is everything to me. Discussion with each other, with me, with professionals, with the material, everything. And this goes for me too. I need to be having good interactions with my students, with their parents, with other teachers, with professionals, everything. Professor Donovan always brought in professionals from the field to talk to us about their job, and that was so much more impactful, were those interactions. Things like discussions, like Socratic seminars, open discussion, group work, all of those are fantastic for bringing this individual knowledge to refined ideas, bringing everyone's little piece that they took from something and bouncing it off each other, And it's an awesome way to incorporate diversity in my schooling, gets kids to interact with each other. It's everything. And then the third thing I'd like to include is inquiry. This is the idea of encouraging your students to ask their own questions and find their own answers, giving them meaning for their learning. Meaning is everything. Meaning was what I gave those students in my environment class before they went out to the greenhouse. When I told them what they needed to do to make their plants grow better, and then they went and saw those plants, that was meaning going right behind what they're doing, and they were way more interested in it once they got that meaning. And these are skills that they're going to keep their whole lives. It's real world skills. If you can teach someone to ask their own questions and find their own answers, they're going to learn their whole life. And that's what's most important for me as a teacher.